Hey everyone. Okay. It's been a hot minute because the energies have been very interesting. And I talked a little bit about this last week, about this big shift that's happening. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to get a little bit candid. And it might trigger some people. So it just is what it is. If you struggle a little bit with multidimensionality or timelines, this may not be the video for you today. I'm going to talk about what I've been shown to some degree without going into too much detail because it's hard for the brain to process what is happening right now. But if you're somebody that is waking up every day and there's just this weird janky vibe, chances are you're being affected by this. And so the first thing I'm going to say, here, I'll pull a card so you guys can look at a card while I'm chatting, because I'm going to do my, ooh, that flew right out. Radical expansion. Ding, 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 ding-a-ding-ding, okay? And we have the seamless unspeakable with the ether. Anyways, however you want to say that. We know what it is, regardless of how it's pronounced. Okay. We are what I would consider, okay, we are in a dead timeline. The timeline we are in is a dead timeline. Does that mean that people are dead here? No. Does it mean that life doesn't, like, it's not all it's not all bad, it's not whatever, but this is how the energy is being described to me. The only people that truly fully succeed in this timeline are people who, manifestations, whatever is coming true for them is through manipulation. There is nowhere for pure source energy to root in this timeline and take up the ability to grow and expand. Okay, there's a lot of interference and distortion. Those of you that sense and feel energy, you probably see it as like a brown dust, constantly interfering with us mentally, so we get distracted and pulled out of our heart. It's very difficult to stay in alignment in this timeline. Okay, and I'm not going to get into the what happened. I'm not going to get into that because that's where the brain starts to break down and be like, how is that even possible? There's no fear here. We are all getting pulled out of this timeline into the original ascension timeline. So we can continue to flow and anchor in our consciousness and all of that stuff. It's extremely difficult to do in this particular timeline we're in. Okay. And for those of you who have a defined G center in human design in your natal chart, you're going to struggle with this, because those of you that have a defined G center feel like we are responsible for everything and we can make everything happen and we can control everything and the universe does what we want. But there are beings that are here that are above our pay grade, because our beautiful little human brains cannot actually make this happen. So if that triggers you, this may not be the video for you. But if you'll notice things, you felt things were coming and they never came to fruition. If you put all this effort, it's like those people who are, and it's not a separation thing, okay? There are just some of us who are more conscious, more self-aware, more tuned in, okay? Because that's what we designed for ourselves in this incarnation. There are people who are not any of those things because that's what they designed themselves for their incarnation. This isn't an us versus them. This isn't we're better than you. This isn't any of that. It's just that in this timeline, those of us who are more conscious, more self-aware will struggle to thrive. We have to work 10 times harder, because the core of this timeline is not based in consciousness. It's based in limitation and restriction. All those rules of the road that constantly keep us in fear and in a state of struggle. Okay, thinking that the only things that are worthwhile are the things we have to struggle for. Okay, that's so for those of us who are waking up and we have more awareness of things and how energy really works and how love is actually more powerful than anything else, we struggle in this timeline because this timeline is not suited for expansion and growth. It's suited to keep the systems and the programming and the conditioning in place. So even when you see, let's say you see somebody in a spiritual business and they're super successful and they're super manifesting, they're not manifesting anything. They're not using that kind of energy. They're manipulating. Same with when you, and here's the thing, there are some spiritual practitioners out there who will use clickbait to get your attention. Okay, they might have a lot of followers. They're playing the game. They're probably very aware that they're playing the game, and they know that they have to play the game in order for anyone to actually hear what they have to say. Okay, I'm not judging any of that. It's just that they have to work outside of their own natural rhythm because this timeline does not support an expansive experience consistently. Okay, they have to play the game. They have to manipulate to get people to listen to them. Okay, so with that being said, understand that if for those of you, if you felt you've been chronically sick, you have a lot of sinus stuff, you have neck stuff, you have heart stuff, like sometimes it feels like constrictive breathing, that's the interference and the distortion that we're constantly transmuting in this timeline. I don't know how the shift is going to happen. I know there's going to be a reset, and I know we're going to, it maybe even be just, we're going to wake up one day and we're going to just feel better because the energy is going to actually support our expansion. Now, here's the thing. There's some diehards out there that are going to be like, listen, you just got to persevere through this. But for those of us who have been in this constant cycle, without any real tangible change, it's like we're constantly revisiting the same patterns over and over and over and over again. It's because there's really no ability to complete in this timeline. There's no real ability to close things off and actually begin anew. And if you look back at even, I'm going to say the last 5 or 6 years, you're going to see times where you feel like something was going to happen or there was going to be this shift or change. And we could feel it for a couple days sometimes, but then it never really stuck because it had nowhere to actually grow in this reality that we're in. Again, I'm telling you guys this just so you understand what you're feeling physically and emotionally and mentally and how everything is so distorted. And this will become really obvious if you take time away from social media. It's lonely, but you'll be far more in tune with what's going on energetically. And you won't be as distracted by the pain and the drama and all that stuff. But it's really interesting because, again, I don't know how the reset's going to happen. I do feel that we could just wake up one morning and we're just gonna feel better. It could be very obvious, it could be very subtle, but it's going to be consistent. All of this negativity, all of this separation, even like, and I'm going to do a twin flame reading for my Patreons. Even the twin flame collective over the past 5 or 6 years has been completely distorted by practitioners who feed separation instead of the love and the energy of the connection, because that's what this timeline feeds. It feeds separation. It keeps us apart from one another. It distorts our expression. It distorts our reception of things. It's in everything we think and do. So it's a massive like mental shift, breaking free of the cage of the mind, and energetically, it's all energy. Okay, this isn't something that you cannot mess this up. You can't interfere with it. You cannot. This reset's going to happen no matter who is where or doing what. It does not matter. Okay, so I do feel like, if that can give you some peace, if you need to receive from your own guidance team, please do that. This is something I've been sitting with for a couple of weeks. I get a little frustrated because I get these downloads and I'm like, you give these to me, but then you make me sit in this space where I have no proof of validity, and eventually I get overwhelmed by the interference and distortion, and I struggle with doubt. So if you're struggling with doubt, there's a good possibility that it's a part of it. But there's so much happening. Last night I had pulled cards just privately for myself, and I shared with a couple of friends just about what had to happen before the reset could happen. And there was something about like the cards that I had pulled. The card that I pulled, the card before that card was about institutions and systems, and how everybody was a slave to the system. But the card that I had pulled were people breaking free of that institutionalization and walking towards like the star or hope. So but the cards that went along with that, we have like there's like the Eight of Swords. So where we mentally cage ourselves very innocently. Okay. We've been taught to be so hyper vigilant of everything that we're constantly the devil's advocate instead of the heart's advocate, right? Like we're very much so derisive, even with ourselves and our thoughts, trying to get everything right so nothing bad happens. That's part of the interference. That's what's being amplified in this particular timeline. And one of the images was a woman who was pregnant, and she was touching a shirt that was kind of hanging up above her, but the pentacle was over the heart and it was glowing. So it was like coming out of the head and into the heart, but it's hard to stay in the heart in this timeline. So it wasn't about spirit being like, this is what you need to do. Spirit was saying energetically, this is the shift that we're making for all of humanity in ourselves, in our connections, and all this kind of stuff that's happening in the background for us so that the reset can happen and we won't have to bring any of this negative crap with us. Okay. And I'm not talking about shadow work. I'm not talking about the difficulties of life. I'm talking about the real deep, dark corruption, negative stuff that we are bombarded with all the time. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. This doesn't mean life could be puppy dogs and rainbows. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that we won't struggle with things after the reset, or we won't have hard things that we need to work through. It just won't be so long and so like breadcrumbs. Like it won't be like that. It'll be very different. So the people that don't wake up, there's not like, you have to remember they're the most vulnerable populace because they don't have a sense of self-awareness. They don't have that connection of being able to think beyond themselves. Okay. So they're the most vulnerable populace. So they're the most vocal and outspoken in this timeline because they're interfered with and they're distorted all the time, and it's amplified for them. Whereas those of us who are a little bit more self-aware, we feel it. Sometimes we react, sometimes we clear. There's just a different, there's an innocence to everything that's happening right now. And I feel like there's going to be more compassion and there's going to be coexistence. Like it's not going to upset you that somebody's unconscious because they're not actually projecting all their stuff onto you. That's the interference and distortion that we've been in amplification. Does it mean that prior to 5 or 6 years ago that wasn't happening? No, it just means that it's been amplified now. So it's just a weird, I know that if you guys feel into this, you'll know what I'm talking about, even if my words aren't fully making sense. So I do feel like, see how the dragon's coming out of her heart space? Okay, there's no space for the dragon in our heart to expand in this timeline. But what's going to happen is we're going to experience a huge shift where we'll actually be able to regulate ourselves, and not from a place of trying to, like, most people I know that are on this journey, they're not bypassing, they're not trying to shut everything down. They're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And there's something to be said about, okay, I'm feeling my feelings. I'm going into, like, there's a process that's supposed to be effective. Okay. And before you come at me with expectations, this is not about band-aiding or bypassing, or there are things at work that are beyond our control and they are being reconciled in the energy. Okay. All right, what else do we need to know? Whoops. Oh, yeah, see, we got that. Oh, I love this. We got this, I think, in a reading I've done recently, because this is our connection to source. So what's happening is we're getting a lot of energy coming in, right? All the downloads, all the shifts, but it bottlenecks. That's why our neck is so for those of us that have sore necks, there's a bottleneck of energy because there's a resistance from the physical realm to take anything in. Okay? Because we're constantly in a state of defense, physically. It's not even a mental thing. This isn't you being defensive. This isn't you being egoic. This is the cells in your body, because the energy is so attacking on a grander scale. Okay, so if you're sensitive to those things, anyways, I'm working on this personally, trying to just allow things to come through and move out of me. I resist, and when I resist, I feel stiffness in my body. Because I'm like, I don't want to feel any of these things anymore, but they have to move through, okay? So we have transitionary energy here. We've got stability amplified. I love that we have unique gifts, okay? We've been kind of shut down or blocked off from our unique gifts because truly, like if I say to people what I'm feeling and sensing, some people will resonate, some people will just hold space for me, but most of the time it doesn't really land anywhere because there's so much interference. There's an inability to accept where other people are at or what they're doing because of the interference in the energy, okay? It's I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like, we would have normal interactions, but it's like somebody pushes a button in the brain and then it becomes distorted in the reception and the exchange. It's such a bizarre thing to witness. I've been feeling it sometimes in the exchanges I have with people. Sometimes I'm witnessing it. It just is what it is. And this isn't a judgment of where I'm at or where other people are at. This is how the energy is in this timeline and how it's been, I'm going to say, since about 2020. I'm going to leave that little note there, okay? You can do whatever you want with it. But I do feel like we all know we have these unique gifts. Like we all have these things about us that we're really good at, whether it's spiritual or energetic or whether it's obvious or not, it doesn't matter. Like there is something, and I love that we kind of have like a blueprint energy here. Like we have something being indoctrinated into our cellular system so that we can anchor these, and whatever we experienced, we're going to continue to take forward with us. This isn't a hard close of everything, but there are just some things from this particular timeline that we have no business holding on to or carrying with us. So it's going to be really interesting, I feel, to see how this all plays out. Okay. You're gonna also witness, we've got trust your innocence. I kind of love that. So I'll get to this in just a moment. You're going to witness or experience some really corrupt, awful things happening, if you haven't already, okay? That feels so like just devastating and unfathomable, and you're going to get dragged into that negative place because that's what the timeline does. That's what the energy of this timeline does. It cages us. And you just get to feel your feelings. You're not going to get trapped there. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you better watch out for that. You got to do this. I'm over that narrative. That's also a narrative of this timeline, that you need to be afraid of everything and you need to do things properly. When I do go on TikTok or I go on Instagram and I have somebody coming on there being like, do you know why you're like this? Or you know what you need to do? I'm like, scroll. No, ma'am. Because I'm at a space in my own expansion where I'm my own authority. And I just want to share with people the information that's coming through so they get to do whatever the heck they want with it, because you are the only one that's going to bear 100% of the responsibility of your decision. So you just get to roll with whatever you get to roll with. I kind of love that we have trust your innocence here. We have change and stability or effort through something closing out. I've gotten these vibes the past few days, just witnessing like children and then teenagers and then adults, and how we almost force ourselves to be this level of maturity as if that makes us more acceptable as adults. Like there's something really distorted about that. It's almost like you need to be bitter and controlling in order to be an adult. I don't know if you guys are picking up that vibe too, but if you ever seen it, let's say like a 14-year-old who's still playful and fun, but the trauma kids, right? The kids with trauma want to shut down that joy and fun because it's not cool. It starts at a very young age. But there's a part of us that's waking up to the innocence of our inner child. My inner child was fire. Like, she was so awesome. And through experiences and growing up, she got shut down. And I'm a little upset about that. No, I'm not going to lie. I don't sugarcoat my feelings. I don't shove things down. I think expression is so important. And even sometimes just saying how you feel and giving yourself permission without judgment to feel how you feel is so powerful. Imagine if if you as a child had a temper tantrum and nobody tried to shut it down because they knew it was just energy moving out of your body and you didn't really know how to articulate yourself. Not even having somebody force you to use your words, just letting yourself feel. There's something really powerful about that. And right now we're feeling all the feels. So if you want to have a temper tantrum, if you want to get in your car and scream, do that, because you're honoring that part of you that never got to express without judgment. And I mean, I'm somebody that if I start crying, I feel like I have to apologize to people because I've been made to feel like it's so awkward or, it's an inconvenience. And that, again, it's intergenerational. My parents had that happen to them. My grandparents had that happen to them. They're all innocent. We're all innocent. Okay. We are all innocent in our behavior. And even sometimes when you're aware of that and emotions get the better of you or whatever that sounds like or looks like, or the situation is too overwhelming. Christmas time for me, I was overwhelmed with all the negative energy in the room and I broke down. And I could feel shame about that. I could be like, oh, you know what? I'm evolved and I've done all this healing. What am I doing breaking down? Well, I'm human. And I'm innocent in that. And I'm honoring that part of me that's so overwhelmed that she can't handle all that stuff. So I feel like if you can just have compassion for yourself, maybe treat yourself like you would an innocent child, it's going to be a lot easier to flow until this particular reset happens. There's also a playful element to this. I have to be honest, I haven't felt super playful in this energy, but if you feel playful, let yourself play without purpose. Like, I remember when I was a kid and it's super wintry here, it's super snowy. There's so much snow. And honestly, if I had a snowsuit, I'd probably go in the backyard. I used to go in the backyard because I had a huge backyard when I was growing up. And I used to make these like apartments. I used to, like, this is the couch and this is my living room and this is my bedroom and this is the bathroom. And I used to like stomp out all the like different rooms and everything in my house, in my backyard, like in the snow. And that was just so much fun. There was absolutely no purpose for it. I was not going to sell this house and make money. I was not going to live in it. I wasn't going to I guess I could have had my friends over and had a good time, but like it was just fun for the sake of being fun. And in this particular timeline, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, everything is so heavy with seriousness. Everything has to have a purpose. Everything has to have a meaning. Everything has to have an end result or be worthy of the time and effort spent. But to me, in my experience, when we're in that playful state, we actually carry a lot of energetic momentum and a lot of really magical things can happen, even if they can't sustain right now. Okay. Oh, yep. This makes so much sense. Big heart chakra, unfurling back to love, opening up to love. That's hard to do when the energy is punchy. That's hard to do when people are punchy, and it's not even the people's faults. Okay. It's not. Like today, I went and had lunch with my parents and I had to stop eating for a moment. The heart sickness I felt, there's just feeling sick in the heart, feeling overwhelmed and not being able, and these are other people saying, I have a wide open G center in my human design, so I pull in a lot of energy through that space. It's one of my gifts. It's how I can feel into what it's like to be somebody, but sometimes it catches me off guard, and just the way that energy is just like closed around the heart like a fist and kind of punches and doesn't want to let anything in or out. But if they would just unfurl and relax, it would take away all of the defensiveness. But it's hard in this timeline, okay? So I do feel like if you're feeling a little bit heartsick right now, just feeling, again, if you're feeling really unwell, go to the doctor if that's what you feel. I'm not giving you medical advice. It's kind of sad that we have to say that all the time, but it just is what it is. Energetically, there's an expansion of the heart, but it's bumping against the rib cage because it's hard to allow and open like that because it requires a state of vulnerability. I think it's interesting that we have a dragonfly here because there is something shifting in the DNA, the cellular DNA. I personally do a lot of work with that, but this is like globally something shifting. And one of the downloads that came in was that one of the things about being in this timeline is that it helped collectively identify within the human genome, genome as in like GENOME. Sometimes people are like, you're saying geno, and I'm like, I'm not saying geno, I'm saying genome. Okay. Anyway, so the pain disruptors and pain points in our DNA that keep us connected and tethered to the pain and drama and separation of survival. So there's something shifting very much. And if you don't understand any of that, that's okay. No one has to understand anything in order to actually, you're not going to miss out. I love this. Look at this luminescence. Okay. The light of our heart, the light of our soul. It's right on the seat of her soul, which is in between the throat chakra and the heart chakra is the higher heart. Okay. There's definitely something expanding energetically that we will eventually experience, but your brain is going to want to find linear ways for which the reset will happen, and it will not happen that way. So just let that go. Just trust that it's all working out for you because that's the truth. Hidden wisdom codes, potent information, Lemurian seed crystals. So if you have a Lemurian crystal, I highly recommend. Sometimes I use that. I can feel it charging through my body. Seeing your triggers as a gift. Okay. Awareness of drama, creating patterns, healing the earth by looking at your inner environment, healing through awareness. There's definitely a lot of activations happening right now energetically that you may or may not, if you're into energy, you will have your own language for this. You'll have your own experience of this. Just roll with that because you can honor it. It's going to be, what's building for us is very different than what we've experienced. Okay. We've in old earth, there are systems that we need to cater to that have nothing to do with energy, nothing to do with love, nothing to do with true communion and connection with other people. And that's all dissolving. That doesn't have any life to it. It's dead eyes, okay? But what's creating it, because New Earth is already here, okay? It's just that we are being shifted into the timeline where we can experience the full development of it in real time in physical form. And so much of what's happening right now is we're being prepared physically, mentally, and emotionally on an energetic level in the cellular structure for this reset so that when we connect with the original ascension timeline, we don't have any of these things that are constantly tripping us up. We've been made so overly responsible for things that aren't ours that a simple acknowledgement and recognition would have been enough to remove it from the system. But because of those pain points and those distortions in the body, we hold on to things that we have no business holding on to. So many of you are probably like, oh my God, I thought I dealt with this. I thought blah, 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 blah. And then, the spiritual overlay, oh, well, that's we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. We're getting to the root. The root was already discovered and dissolved, but the echo and the memory of that root, which is constantly played on in our minds through the interference, that brown energy, okay, it's constantly played over because that keeps us stuck, okay? Anyways. Okay, one more card. What do we have? One more card. Oh, endless opportunities, 100%. Okay. Because we feel all of this. We feel the original ascension timeline. We feel the possibility. But we have yet to actually bring that physical manifestation into play because it cannot take root where we are right now. And it doesn't matter. You haven't done anything wrong. Okay. I want to be super clear about that. You have not done anything wrong. In the shift into this reset, you're going to pick whatever transformation you want to go through. It's truly going to be self-directed in a way where we feel empowered. We feel like we are our own authority. We feel like we are co-creating with the universe. We're not being subjected to its will, because the interference of this timeline makes you feel submersive or submissive to the powers that be and not actually working with them. And that's not conditioning and programming. That's the interference of the energy in the mind that's making the mind distorted. I don't know how else. I'm trying to think. It's almost like somebody, like let's say you're having, a connection with source, or you're in flow and somebody zaps you out of that flow. That's the energy. The energy is zapping you out of the flow because it's interfering. Again, if these are things you understand, I don't know how else to explain it, so it's okay. Just get what you need from this video. Okay, I said one more, but I can't leave a blank space, so let's get, okay, 2 more. Oh, I love this. Life force energy, and alignment. This is what we're heading into with this expansion. Feeling like we're actually living life. Like feeling like we're alive. Okay. We haven't felt like that in a really long time. Most people I have talked to, most people I know, feel like they're just going through the motions. They're tired all the time. We do not feel alive. We don't feel aligned. We feel like we have to force alignment instead of it just allowing naturally. It's a very interesting time, but I do feel we will recuperate our lives. We will get our lives back, and we will be aligned, and we will actually experience this new concept of new earth that everybody is talking about. What's going to be really interesting, and I'm just going to leave this as the last little bit, what's going to be super interesting is that even though there are shitty things in this timeline, there are certain things that we will grieve and have to let go of because they've become familiar and they become a part of our lives, but they aren't necessarily meant for our true path. So you might be feeling all of a sudden you're like emotional out of nowhere. You're sad out of nowhere. Just let yourself feel those feelings and allow the energy to move out. You don't have to figure it out. You just get to let yourself feel. So I hope that this has helped. I'm sending you all so much love, and take care.